Chapter 1. The Ghost in the Apothecary. Dawn broke over the packlands like a bruise. Purple and gray light filtered through the dusty windows of the herbal shop. Ayla ground dried lavender into a fine powder. The rhythmic escharr sound of the mortar and pestle soothed her fraying nerves. She kept her head down. It was safer that way. In this pack, eyes were weapons, and she had no shield. The bell above the door chimed. Ayla stiffened. She knew that heavy tread. It was Kalen, a beta warrior with a limp he refused to let heal properly. He smelled of wet dog and stale beer. He didn't look at her. No one ever really looked at her. To them, she was just the girl with the broken wolf. The Omega who couldn't shift. The mistake. Pain tincture, Kalen grunted. He slammed a copper coin onto the scratched wooden counter. Ayla moved quickly. She didn't want to keep him waiting because delay meant attention, and attention usually meant cruelty. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the amber bottle on the top shelf. She felt the phantom ache in her bones where her wolf should be. It was a hollow space, a silent void. Most shifters felt a hum of power beneath their skin, but Ayla felt only cold static. "Here," she whispered. Her voice was rusty from disuse. Kalen snatched the bottle. His fingers brushed hers. He flinched as if she had burned him. A sneer curled his lip. "Korrefull, Runt. Don't infect me with your weakness." He turned and marched out. The door slammed. The bell jangled angrily. Ayla let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She gripped the edge of the counter until her knuckles turned white. It wasn't the insult that stung. She was used to insults. It was the dismissal. She existed in the margins of their lives. She healed their wounds, mixed their tonics, and soothed their colicky pups, yet she remained invisible. She walked to the window and watched the village wake up. Pups chased each other in the mud. Mated pairs walked with their shoulders brushing, sharing a silent language of scents and bonds. A pang of longing pierced her chest. It was sharp and hot. She wanted that. She wanted to belong. But wanting was dangerous because it bred hope, and hope was the cruelest poison of all. A shadow flickered near the tree lean. Ayla squinted. Nothing was there, just the swaying pines and the morning mist. Yet the hair on her arms stood up. She rubbed her skin. It felt like someone was watching, someone with eyes that saw too much. She shook her head. Paranoia was a side effect of loneliness. No one watched the runt. No one cared enough to stalk a girl who barely existed. She returned to her herbs. There was comfort in the crushing of leaves. There was order in the mixing of roots. Plants didn't judge. They didn't care about rank or power or shifting. They just grew. She poured the lavender powder into a jar. Today would be the same as yesterday. She would work. She would hide. She would survive. That was all she had. That was all she was allowed to have. Chapter 2. A slip of the thumb. Midday heat made the shop stifle. The air smelled of dried sage and frustration. Ayla stared at the screen of her cracked phone. Her supplier, a greedy human from the city, had just canceled her order for moonblooms. Again, due to new royal tax restrictions, the email read. Ayla growled low in her throat. It was a human sound, not a wolf one, but the anger was feral. The Alpha King. It always came back to him. Ryder distinct. The tyrant on the throne. He sat in his high fortress of stone and glass, issuing decrees that strangled the little people. He didn't know what it was like to count copper coins. He didn't know the struggle of keeping a small shop alive when the world wanted you to fail. She opened a messaging app. She needed to vent. Her friend Mara, a rogue living 2 towns over, was the only one who listened. Ayla's thumbs flew across the screen. The anger poured out of her like hot wax. He's doing it again. The Alpha King is suffocating us. He sits on his throne of bones and thinks he owns the air we breathe. He's just another brute ruining lives because he's too powerful to care. I hate him. I hate everything he stands for. She added a furious emoji. Her finger hovered over the send button. She took a deep breath. Sending this wouldn't fix the tax. It wouldn't bring the moonblooms. But it felt good to say it. It felt good to be angry instead of afraid. She tapped the screen. Ping. The message swooshed away. Then the screen blinked. The contact name at the top didn't say Mara. It was a string of digits she didn't recognize. A private number. A restricted code. Ayla froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She tapped the screen frantically. Cancel. Delete. Undo. Delivered. The word mocked her. It sat there in gray text, innocent and terrifying. She stared at the number. It looked odd. Too many zeros. It wasn't a local pack number. It looked like a government line. A secure channel. No, she breathed. No, no, no. Maybe it was a deadline. Maybe it was a fax machine. Maybe it would just bounce back. She waited. The seconds stretched into hours. The silence in the shop grew heavy. Dust motes danced in the sunbeams, oblivious to her panic. Read. The gray text turned blue. The phone slipped from her sweating palms. It clattered onto the floorboards. Ayla backed away. Her legs hit the counter. He read it. Someone read it. Fear, cold and slimy, coiled in her stomach. Insulting the Alpha King was treason. It was grounds for public shaming, for imprisonment, for exile. She was already on thin ice because of her lack of a wolf. This could be the crack that shattered her world. She snatched the phone up. She should apologize. She should say it was a joke, a typo, a game. But her fingers wouldn't work. She stared at the screen, waiting for a reply, waiting for the threats, waiting for the doom. But nothing came. The screen remained blank. The cursor didn't blink. Just silence. Perhaps he didn't care. Perhaps he was laughing. Or perhaps, and this was the thought that made her blood run cold, he wasn't texting back because he didn't need to. People didn't warn the prey before the strike. Ayla shoved the phone into her pocket. She needed to close the shop. She needed to hide. She needed to run. But where? The pack lands were surrounded by borders. The guards were loyal to the king. There was no escape. She was trapped in a cage of her own making, and she had just poked the beast with a stick. Chapter 3. The Wolf at the Door. Night fell like a heavy curtain. The wind picked up, howling through the eaves of the shop. It sounded like voices. Accusing voices. Ayla locked the front door. Her hand shook so badly the key scratched the metal plate. Scritch, scratch. The sound grated on her ears. She turned off the lights. The shop plunged into shadows. The scent of dry earth and fear filled the small space. She retreated to her living quarters in the back. It was a tiny room with a cot and a stove. Usually, it was her sanctuary. Tonight, it felt like a cell. She sat on the edge of the bed. Every creak of the old building made her jump. She kept checking her phone. Still nothing. No reply. No calls. Just the damning red receipt burning a hole in her mind. Suddenly, a sensation rippled through her. It started at the base of her spine. A heat. A spark. It traveled up her back, raising the fine hairs on her neck. Ayla gasped. She clutched her chest. Her heart wasn't just beating, it was thundering. Thud, thud, thud. Her dormant wolf. The empty space inside her wasn't empty anymore. Something was stirring. It felt huge, ancient. It felt like waking up from coma. Why now? She had spent 20 years praying for a flicker of her wolf. Why did it choose this moment of terror to move? A low vibration hummed through the floorboards. It wasn't the wind. It was an engine. A powerful engine. Then came the slam of a car door. Heavy boots crunched on the gravel outside. Ayla stood up. Her knees knocked together. She couldn't breathe. She backed away until her shoulders hit the wall. There was nowhere to go. Bang, bang, bang. The knock shook the entire shop. Dust rained down from the ceiling. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Open up, a voice boomed. It was deep, resonant. It carried the weight of authority that made her instincts scream, submit. Ayla didn't move. She couldn't. The lock clicked. The wood splintered. The door swung open with a groan. Rain and wind swept into the room. A figure filled the doorway. He was massive. Broad shoulders blocked out the moonlight. He wore dark tactical gear that hugged pure muscle. Rain dripped from his dark hair. But it was his eyes that pinned her to the wall. They were gold. Molten, burning gold. Ryder, the Alpha King. He stepped inside. The air in the room changed instantly. It became heavy, charged with ozone and pine and terrifying power. He didn't look at the herbs. He didn't look at the broken lock. He looked straight at her. His gaze was physical. It felt like a touch. It swept over her cheap clothes, her messy hair, her trembling hands. Ayla's wolf surged. It wasn't a flicker this time. It was a roar. A wave of heat crashed over her. She felt a pull, a magnetic yank toward him that defied gravity. She wanted to run to him. She wanted to run from him. Ryder stopped 3 feet away. He towered over her. He smelled of storm and violence. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. He turned the screen toward her. There was her text, the angry rant, the hatred. His face was a mask of stone, but his eyes were blazing with an emotion she couldn't name. It wasn't anger. It was hunger. "You have a lot to say, little wolf," Ryder said. His voice was a low rumble that vibrated in her chest. "Say it to my face." He took a step closer. The space between them vanished. The air crackled. "Tell me," he whispered, and the sound was dangerous, soft, and lethal. "Tell me exactly how I am ruining your life." Ayla looked up. She saw the predator. She saw the king. But deep in those golden eyes, she saw something else. A question. A challenge. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't invisible. He saw her. He really saw her. And that was more terrifying than any punishment he could deal. She opened her mouth to speak, but the world tilted. The scent of him overwhelmed her senses. The pull in her gut snapped tight. Fate had arrived, and it had arrived with fangs. Chapter 4. The Gravity of Kings. Ryder stood like a monolith in the center of her shop. The air around him grew heavy and thick. It tasted of ozone and impending violence. Ayla backed up until the wooden shelves dug into her spine. Jars of dried nettle rattled against each other. The sound was a chaotic drumbeat in the silence. "Well," Ryder demanded. He stepped closer. His boots crushed the dried herbs scattered on the floor. The scent of crushed mint mixed with his dark, forest musk. It was intoxicating. It made Ayla's head spin. She tried to find her voice. It was lost somewhere in her throat. She looked at the phone in his hand. The screen glowed in the dim light. Her words, her anger, they seemed so small now. "I did not mean to send it," Ayla managed to whisper. Her voice cracked. Ryder tilted his head. The movement was sharp, predatory, but you meant the words. "You call me a brute. You said I sit on a throne of bones." He was close enough to touch now. The heat radiating from his body was a physical wall. Ayla looked up. She had to crane her neck to meet his gaze. His eyes were not just gold. They were swirling pools of molten metal. They burned with a hunger that had nothing to do with politics. Ayla felt a strange sensation in her chest. It was a pull, a tug. It felt like a hook had snagged behind her navel and was dragging her toward him. Her dormant wolf, usually a silent ghost, scratched at the inside of her ribs. It wanted him. It wanted to bare its throat. "You are shaking," Ryder observed. His voice dropped an octave. It wasn't a taunt. It sounded almost fascinated. He reached out. His hand was large, calloused. He brushed a stray lock of hair from her cheek. His skin was scorching hot. A shock wave zipped through Ayla. It singed her nerves. She gasped. Ryder froze. His pupils dilated until the gold was swallowed by black. "What are you?" he growled. The door burst open behind him. 3 armed guards stormed in. They wore the royal crest. Silver wolves snarling on black Kevlar. They had weapons drawn. The moment shattered. The intimacy evaporated like mist. "My king," the lead guard barked. "The perimeter is not secure. We must move." Ryder did not look at them. He kept his eyes on Ayla. His jaw clenched. A muscle ticked in his cheek. He looked like a man waking from a trance. He looked furious. "Secure her," Ryder ordered. His voice was ice. The guards moved instantly. Hands grabbed Ayla's arms. They were rough, impersonal. They dragged her away from the shelves, away from the safety of her herbs. "Wait," Ayla cried. She struggled. "I didn't do anything. It was just a text." Ryder turned his back. He walked into the rainy night without looking back. But Ayla saw his hand. It was clenched into a fist at his side. He was fighting something. And as the guard shoved her toward the black SUV waiting outside, she realized she was fighting it too. The pull remained. It stretched between them like a taut wire. Invisible, unbreakable, terrifying. Chapter 5. Blood on the pavement. Rain lashed against the asphalt. The world was a blur of gray water and flashing lights. The guard shoved Ayla toward the waiting convoy. She stumbled. Her boots slipped on the wet gravel. No one caught her. They just hauled her up by her elbows. She was a prisoner now, a traitor who dared to insult the crown. The villagers were watching. Faces pressed against windows. Curtains twitched. No one came out to help. They knew better. The Alpha King's justice was swift. Ryder stood by the lead vehicle. He was pacing. His movements were jerky, unnatural. He looked like a caged animal. A low growl ripped from his throat. It vibrated through the wet air. His guard stepped back. They looked uneasy. Their alpha was losing control. Ayla felt his distress. It hit her like a physical blow. It was a wave of pure, unadulterated rage mixed with confusion. It wasn't his rage. It was his wolf. The beast was surfacing. It didn't want to leave her. It didn't want her manhandled. She stopped fighting the guards. She stood still. Ryder spun around. His eyes were fully black. The whites were gone. He bared his teeth. Fangs lengthened, gleaming white in the headlights. He looked ready to tear his own men apart. "Let her go," he snarled. The guards hesitated. "Sire, protocol dictates." "Release her," Ryder roared. The sound cracked like thunder. The guards dropped her arms instantly. Ayla stood alone in the rain. She should have run. She should have fled into the woods. But she didn't. She walked toward him. Her body moved on its own. She walked right up to the monster. "Ryder," she said softly. She reached out. She placed her small, cold hand on his heaving chest. The effect was instant. Ryder shuddered. The tension drained from his frame. The black receded from his eyes, leaving the gold bright and clear. He looked down at her hand on his chest. He looked stunned. "Ow," he breathed. Whiz. A sound like a tearing sheet cut through the air. Ryder moved faster than thought. He tackled Ayla. They hit the wet pavement hard. Ryder took the impact. He shielded her body with his own. Thud. A black arrow buried itself in the tire of the SUV, right where Ayla's head had been a second ago. "Assassin," a guard screamed. Chaos erupted. Wolves shifted. Clothes shredded. Giant beasts poured into the street. Screams echoed. But Ayla didn't see any of it. She only saw Ryder. He was hovering over her. His body was a cage of muscle and steel. He wasn't looking at the attackers. He was looking at her. "You are targeted," he said. His voice was devoid of humanity. It was pure instinct, mind to protect. He grabbed her. He didn't wait for her to stand. He lifted her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. He carried her toward the armored car. The rain washed the blood from a scrape on his cheek. It dripped on her face. Iron and salt. Ayla buried her face in his neck. She inhaled his scent. It calmed the terror screaming in her mind. She was being hunted. Someone wanted her dead. And the only thing standing between her and the grave was the brute she claimed to hate. Chapter 6. The Mark of the Usurper. The interior of the armored SUV was silent as a tomb. The leather seats smelled new and expensive. Rain drummed a frantic rhythm on the roof. Ryder sat next to her. He took up too much space. His thigh pressed against hers. The heat from his body soaked into her wet clothes. He hadn't spoken since the attack. He was staring at the arrow shaft he had snapped off the tire. He turned it over in his fingers. It bore a crest Ayla didn't recognize. A red hawk. "They know," Ryder said. He wasn't speaking to her. He was speaking to the air. "They know what you are." Ayla hugged herself. She was shivering. "What I am? I am nobody. I'm a shop girl." Ryder turned to her. The intensity of his gaze made her breath hitch. "You're not nobody. You calm my wolf with a touch. You are anchor, and that makes you a weapon." He tossed the arrow aside. He leaned in. Ayla pressed her back against the door. There was nowhere to run. The car was moving at high speed. The fortress was miles away, but every second brought them closer to his world. "Give me your arm," he commanded. "What?" Ayla asked. Her voice trembled. "Because if we cross the fortress line without a claim, the council will kill you. They will see you as a threat to the lineage. I need to make you untouchable." Ayla hesitated. A claim. It was archaic. It was possessive. It meant she belonged to him, not as a mate, but as property. A ward of the king. "Do it," she whispered. She wanted to live. Ryder took her wrist. His grip was firm but careful. He rolled up her wet sleeve. His skin against hers sent sparks dancing up her arm. He lifted her wrist to his mouth. He didn't hesitate. His teeth grazed the sensitive skin of her inner wrist. Ayla gasped. Then he bit down. Pain flared, sharp and hot. It was followed immediately by a rush of endorphins that made her toes curl. Ayla threw her head back. A sound escaped her lips. It wasn't a cry of pain. It was something else. Something meaty. Ryder pulled back. He licked the drop of blood that beaded on the wound. His eyes glowed. "Done," he rasped. Ayla looked at her wrist. The bite mark wasn't bleeding anymore. It was glowing. A faint, silver luminescence pulsed beneath her skin. It formed a symbol, a crown entangled with vines. "That isn't a normal ward mark," Ayla said. She felt dizzy. The magic in the mark was heavy. It throbbed in time with her heart. Ryder looked at the mark. He looked disturbed. "No, it isn't." He didn't explain. He turned away and looked out the window. The dark silhouette of the wolf fortress loomed ahead on the mountain. It was a massive structure of black stone and jagged spires. It looked like a beast waiting to swallow them whole. The car slowed. The iron gates groaned open. Ayla rubbed her wrist. The mark burned. She had survived the assassin. She had survived the king's anger. But as the gates slammed shut behind them, sealing her inside the royal stronghold, she realized the real danger was just beginning. She was trapped in the den of the wolf, and she had just been branded by the most dangerous alpha of them all. Chapter 7. The Cage of Stone and Silk. The Fortress of Wolves did not welcome guests. It devoured them. Huge iron doors slammed shut behind Ayla, sealing out the rain and the world she knew. The air inside was frigid. It smelled of beeswax, old stone, and the metallic tang of magic. Servants in gray uniforms scurried along the edges of the grand hall. They kept their heads down, but their eyes darted toward her. They smelled the foreign scent. They smelled the king on her. Ryder did not stop. He marched toward the grand staircase, his boots striking the marble like war drums. Ayla struggled to keep up. Her legs ached. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a cold, trembling exhaustion. "Take her to the east wing," Ryder barked at a severe-looking woman waiting by the stairs. "She is not to leave the room. She speaks to no one." The woman, a beta with hair pulled back so tight it pulled at her eyes, bowed stiffly. She looked at Ayla with undisguised contempt. To her, Ayla was just a stray dragged in from the rain. A nuisance. A stain on the royal floor. Ryder turned to leave. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't explain. He simply walked away toward the war room, leaving Ayla alone in the shark tank. "This way," the woman snapped. Her name was Magda. She grabbed Ayla's arm, right above the fresh mark. Ayla winced. The silver brand pulsed hot against her skin. Magda paused. She looked down at the glowing symbol. Her eyes widened. The contempt vanished, replaced by pure, unadulterated fear. She snatched her hand back as if Ayla were radioactive. "Mother Moon," Magda whispered. She crossed herself. "What has he done?" "Please," Ayla said. Her voice was a rasp. "I just want to go home." Magda did not answer. The fear in her eyes hardened into something colder. Calculation. She gestured for Ayla to follow. They climbed endless stairs. The portraits of dead kings watched them pass. Their painted eyes seemed to judge Ayla's unworthy blood. They reached a heavy oak door. Magda unlocked it with a skeleton key. The room inside was luxurious but stifling. Velvet drapes blocked the windows. A fire roared in the hearth, yet the room felt ice cold. "Stay," Magda ordered. Do not open the door for anyone but the king. If you value your life, you will be a ghost in this house." The door clicked shut. The lock turned. Ayla was alone. She walked to the mirror. The girl staring back was a stranger. Her hair was matted with rain. Her eyes were wide circles of panic. But the mark on her wrist shone with a steady, eerie light. It cast a silver glow on the dark wood of the vanity. It wasn't just a claim. It was a beacon. And in a fortress full of predators, being bright was a death sentence. Chapter 8. A Dangerous Proximity. 3 hours passed in silence. Ayla paced the Persian rug until the pattern burned into her mind. She had tried the door. Locked. She had tried the window. It opened to a sheer drop down the cliffside. She was trapped in a gilded birdcage. Then the lock clicked. Ayla spun around. She expected Magda with a tray of poisoned food. Instead, Ryder filled the doorway. He had changed. The tactical gear was gone, replaced by a black dress shirt that strained against his shoulders. He held 2 tumblers of amber liquid. He looked tired. The lines around his mouth were deep trenches of stress. But his eyes were still that burning, molten gold. "Drink," he said. He kicked the door shut with his heel. He held out a glass. Ayla took it. Her fingers brushed his. The spark was instantaneous. It zipped up her arm, settling heavy and hot in her belly. Ryder felt it too. His nostrils flared. He took a long swallow of his drink, draining half of it in one go. "The council is demanding your head," he said bluntly. He walked to the fire and stared into the flames. "They say you are a spy, a witch. They say the mark on your wrist is blasphemy." "I didn't ask for it," Ayla countered. She set the glass down. The alcohol smell made her nauseous. "You bit me. You brought me here." Ryder turned. He moved with a deceptive grace for a man of his size. In 2 strides, he was in front of her. He trapped her against the vanity. He didn't touch her, but his presence was a cage. "I saved you," he growled. "That arrow was meant for your heart. Do you know why? Because I texted you?" Ayla guessed. "Because I insulted the king." "No." Ryder leaned down. His breath ghosted over her ear. "People insult me every day. They don't get assassinated by the Red Hawk clan an hour later. Someone wants you dead because of what you are." "I am a nobody," she insisted. Tears pricked her eyes. "I have no wolf. I have no magic." "Liar." Ryder grabbed her wrist. He lifted the glowing mark between them. "Look at it. A normal claim fades to a scar. Yours is feeding on my aura. It is growing. You are siphoning my power, Ayla. Only a mate bond does that." The word hung in the air. "Mate." Ayla stopped breathing. The world narrowed down to his golden eyes and the heat of his hand on her skin. It wasn't possible. She was a broken omega. He was the alpha of alphas. "I can't be," she whispered. The moon goddess wouldn't be that cruel. Ryder's expression darkened. Hurt flashed across his face, quick and sharp. "Cruel? Is it so terrible to be mine?" He leaned closer. His gaze dropped to her lips. The tension snapped tight. Ayla's heart hammered against her ribs. She wanted him to close the distance. She wanted to forget the assassins and the council and drown in the fire he offered. Buzz. Ryder's phone vibrated on the table. The spell broke. He released her and snatched the device. He read the message. His face went pale. "Stay here," he ordered. His voice was rough. "Do not move." He stormed out. Ayla glanced at the phone he left behind on the table. The screen was still lit. The message was simple. "The Heart Wolf bleeds tonight. Check the gallery." Chapter 9. The Shadow in the Walls. Ayla stared at the phone. The Heart Wolf. The words meant nothing to her, yet they made her skin crawl. The message was a threat, a promise of violence, and Ryder had run straight into it. A scream echoed through the stone walls. It came from the hallway. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a scream of pain. Ayla forgot Ryder's order. She forgot Magda's warning. Instinct took the wheel. She grabbed a heavy iron poker from the fireplace and ran to the door. It was unlocked. Ryder had left in such a haste he forgot to secure her cage. She slipped into the corridor. The lights flickered. Shadows lengthened, twisting into clawed shapes. The air smelled of copper. Fresh blood. She followed the scent. It led her toward the gallery, a long hall lined with tapestries. The silence was heavy, thick. She crept forward, the poker raised. Her heart was a frantic drum in her ears. At the end of the hall, a figure lay on the floor. It was a guard. His throat was torn out. Ayla clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a scream. "Found you," a voice hissed. A shadow detached itself from a tapestry. It was a man, but his face was distorted, shifting between human and wolf. He wore the livery of the castle staff, but his eyes were manic. Rogue, an infiltrator. He lunged. Ayla swung the poker. It connected with a sickening crunch against his shoulder, but he barely flinched. He backhanded her. The force threw her across the hall. She hit the stone wall. Her vision blurred. Pain exploded in her skull. The rogue was on her instantly. His claws dug into her shoulders. His breath smelled of rotten meat. "The master wants your heart," he snarled. He raised a clawed hand to strike. Ayla closed her eyes. She waited for the end. A roar shook the foundations of the fortress. A black blur slammed into the rogue. It was massive, lethal. Ryder. He was in his semi-shift form, claws extended, eyes burning with demonic light. He didn't just fight the rogue. He dismantled him. It was brutal, primal. Ryder tore the attacker away from Ayla and slammed him into the floor. Stone cracked. Bones snapped. Ryder didn't stop. He clawed. He bit. He destroyed the threat with a savagery that bordered on madness. Blood sprayed the pristine walls. When the rogue stopped moving, Ryder stood up. He was panting. His shirt was shredded. Blood coated his chest. He turned to Ayla. She shrank back. He looked like a monster, a killer. But then he fell to his knees. He crawled toward her, ignoring the carnage around him. He reached out a trembling, blood-stained hand. He didn't grab her. He hovered his fingers over her bruised cheek. "Ayla," he choked out. His voice was broken. "Did he touch you?" He wasn't the king. He wasn't a monster. He was a terrified man who had almost lost the only thing that mattered. Ayla looked at the carnage, then at him. She saw the fear in his eyes, the desperate need, and in that moment, the fear of him vanished. "I'm okay," she whispered. She reached out and took his bloody hand. The silver mark on her wrist flared, blindingly bright. It sent a pulse of pure, white energy into him. Ryder gasped. The madness in his eyes cleared. The wolf receded. He pulled her into his chest. He buried his face in her hair. He held her like she was glass. "They're inside the walls," he murmured against her neck. "Nowhere is safe. Except with me." Ayla closed her eyes. She knew he was right. The war had come to them, and whether she wanted it or not, she was the prize they were fighting for. Chapter 10. The Gilded Cage. Sunlight filtered through the reinforced glass of the training room, casting long bars of shadow across the mats. It looked like a prison cell. It felt like one, too. Ayla wiped sweat from her brow. Her muscles burned. For 3 days, Ryder had kept her here. He called it protection. Ayla called it captivity. She threw a punch at the heavy bag. Thud. It was weak, pathetic. She was an herbalist, not a warrior. Again, the instructor barked. He was a grim gamma named Silas who looked at her like she was a glass doll about to shatter. Ayla grit her teeth. She struck the bag again. Her knuckles bruised. The frustration bubbling in her chest was a toxic stew. She was tired of being the victim. She was tired of the guards outside the door, the whispers in the hallways, and the way Ryder looked at her. He looked at her like a starving man looks at a feast he is forbidden to touch. The door opened. The atmosphere in the room sucked tight. Ryder walked in. He wore a suit, crisp and black, but the savage energy rolling off him made the expensive fabric look ridiculous. He dismissed Silas with a sharp nod. The gamma bowed and fled, leaving Ayla alone with the king. "You are not focusing," Ryder said. He walked around her, circling like a shark. "I am an herbalist," Ayla snapped. She didn't bow. She didn't cower. Fear had burned away, leaving only exhaustion. "I mix teas. I heal cuts. I do not punch leather sacks." Ryder stopped in front of her. He grabbed the heavy bag to stop it swinging. You are the target of the Red Hawk clan. You are the anomaly in my court. You must be strong enough to survive when I am not there. Then let me go, Ayla challenged. She stepped into his space. If I am such a liability, send me away. Let me disappear. Ryder's eyes flashed. The gold iris swallowed the pupil. Never. The word was a vow. A chain. Suddenly, a spasm ripped through Ayla. It started in her marrow. It felt like lightning striking her spine. She gasped and doubled over. Her dormant wolf, usually a quiet ghost, was thrashing. It wasn't just waking up. It was screaming. Ryder caught her before she hit the floor. His hands were iron bands on her arms. Ayla, what is it? It burns, she choked out. My blood. It burns. Ryder pulled her close. He pressed his forehead to hers. Breathe. Focus on me. But she couldn't focus. The pain was blinding. It was a biological imperative rewriting her DNA. Her wolf clawed at the back of her throat. It wanted out. It sensed the threat in the air before she did. Something is coming, Ayla whispered, her eyes rolling back. Ryder, something is here. The lights in the gym flickered and died. The emergency sirens began to wail. Chapter 11. The Prophecy of Bone. The archives were buried deep beneath the fortress, a tomb of knowledge that smelled of dust and dry parchment. Ryder dragged Ayla through the twisting catacombs. The sirens were faint down here, a distant drone of panic. He needed answers. The spasms tearing through Ayla were not normal, shifting pains. They were magical. He kicked open the heavy iron door of the sanctum. Elder Thorn sat at a long wooden table. He was older than the trees in the forest. His skin was like crumpled paper, and his eyes were milky white. He didn't look up when they burst in. I expected you sooner, King Ryder, Thorn rasped. His voice sounded like dry leaves skittering on stone. Ryder deposited Ayla into a chair. She was pale, shivering violently. Fix her. She is burning up. Thorn stood slowly. He shuffled over to Ayla. He placed a withered hand on her forehead. A shock of static electricity popped in the air. Thorn pulled back, his milky eyes widening. She is not sick, Thorn said. She is awakening. She is 22, Ryder argued. He paced the small room, his wolf pacing inside his skin. She is past the age of first shift. She is a dormant omega. She is not an omega, Thorn corrected. He turned to the shelves and pulled down a scroll bound in human skin. He unrolled it. The ink was red. She is a heart wolf. The cordis lupus. Ryder froze. The term was a myth. A bedtime story used to scare pups. The heart wolf was a biological anomaly. A wolf born with a soul so vast it could stabilize or destroy an entire pack lineage. They were batteries of pure moon energy. That is a fairy tale, Ryder said flatly. Is it? Thorn pointed a bony finger at Ayla. Look at her mark. It feeds. It grows. She stabilized your rage in the rain. She healed your madness in the gallery. She is the anchor the prophecy spoke of. If she mates with you, your line becomes immortal. If she dies, your wolf goes mad and devours the kingdom. Ayla sat up. The pain had receded to a dull throb. She heard every word. I'm a battery? She asked. Her voice was small, terrified. I'm just a tool to you. Ryder turned to her. The horror on his face was real. He hadn't known. Ayla. No. I didn't know. The Red Hawks know, Thorn interrupted. That is why they send assassins. They do not want to kill her to hurt you, Ryder. They want to kill her to drive you insane. Without her, you become the beast that ends the world. The weight of the words crushed the air in the room. Ayla looked at Ryder. She saw the man she was starting to trust, but now she saw the fear in him. He wasn't looking at her like a woman anymore. He was looking at her like she was the only thing keeping him from becoming a monster. She wasn't a person. She was a leash. Chapter 12. Running into the blade. Betrayal tasted like copper in Ayla's mouth. She scrambled back from the table. The chair screeched against the stone floor. Ryder reached for her, but she flinched away. Don't touch me, she warned. Her voice shook. I am not your cure. I am not your anchor. Ayla, listen, Ryder pleaded. He stepped forward, hands raised in surrender. The prophecy changes nothing. I chose you before I knew. Did you? Ayla countered. Tears blurred her vision. Or did your wolf know? Did your beast smell the battery and decide to claim it? She didn't wait for an answer because she knew the answer would break her. She turned and bolted. Ayla, stop, Ryder roared. She didn't stop. She ran out of the archives, into the dark labyrinth of the lower tunnels. She knew the layout from the maps she had studied in her room. There was a service exit near the kitchens. If she could get to the forest, she could disappear. She could go to the humans. She could hide where magic couldn't find her. She ran until her lungs burned. She ran until the sounds of Ryder's pursuit faded. She burst through the heavy wooden door of the service exit and spilled out into the night air. The cool wind hit her face. Freedom. She scrambled up the rocky slope, heading for the tree line. She was almost there. She could smell the pine needles. She could smell the damp earth. She could smell the wolfsbane. Ayla skidded to a halt. A figure stepped out from behind a massive oak tree. He wore a gray cloak, but the crest on his chest was visible in the moonlight. A red hawk. It wasn't an assassin. It was darker. It was Darius, the rival Alpha's right hand. He was smiling. It was a cold, sharp smile that didn't reach his eyes. We knew you would run, Darius said smoothly. The king is suffocating, isn't he? All that pressure, all that expectation. Ayla backed away. She looked for a weapon. A rock. A branch. Anything. Stay back. Darius laughed. He took a step forward. We don't want to kill you, little heart wolf. That was plan A. Plan B is much more interesting. He pulled a small device from his pocket. It hummed with a low frequency. Ayla's wolf screamed in her head. Danger. Trap. She turned to run back to the fortress. Back to Ryder. She would rather be a leash than a prisoner of the hawks. But she was too slow. Darius activated the device. A high-pitched sonic blast hit Ayla. It wasn't sound. It was pain. It scrambled her equilibrium. Her knees buckled. The world spun sideways. She hit the dirt hard. Darkness rushed in from the edges of her vision. The last thing she saw was Darius standing over her, and the distant, terrified howl of the Alpha King realizing he was too late. Chapter 13. A Dangerous Confession. Pain throbbed behind Ayla's eyes. It was a dull, rhythmic hammer against her skull. She blinked. The ceiling above her was familiar. It was the velvet-draped canopy of the bed in the east wing. She was back in the gilded cage. She sat up. The room spun. Ryder sat in the armchair by the fire. He was still wearing the shredded suit from the gym, now caked with mud and dry blood that was not his own. He looked like a statue carved from grief and violence. His hands were clasped so tightly together that the knuckles were white bone. You came back, he said. His voice was a graveled ruin. Ayla touched the back of her head where the sonic blast had hit her. I didn't come back. You brought me back. Ryder looked up. The gold in his eyes was dim. I tore through 6 of Darius's men to get to you. I nearly killed an envoy. The council is calling for my abdication. They say I am unstable. They say I am compromised by a witch. They are right, Ayla whispered. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed. The floor was cold against her bare feet. I am a liability. You heard the elder. I'm just a battery for your power. You should have let Darius take me. Ryder moved. He was across the room in a blur of motion. He dropped to his knees in front of her. It was a position of submission that no king should ever take. He took her hands. His skin was burning fever hot. Stop it, he commanded. Do not say that. Do not think it. It is the truth, Ayla argued. She tried to pull her hands away, but he held fast. You only want me because the prophecy says I keep you sane. You want the anchor, not the girl. No. Ryder pressed her hands against his chest, right over his thundering heart. The prophecy is dust and old words. I do not care about the heart wolf. I care about the quiet. Ayla paused. The quiet. My whole life has been noise, Ryder confessed. He looked into her eyes with a vulnerability that stole the breath from her lungs. The rage, the wolf, the politics. It is a constant scream in my head. But when you're near, the screaming stops. When I touched you in the rain, it was the first silence I have known in 20 years. I do not want your power, Ayla. I want your peace. The confession hung in the air between them. It was raw. It was terrified. It was love, stripped of all its armor. Ayla softened. The wall around her heart crumbled. She leaned forward and rested her forehead against his. I am scared, Ryder. Good, he breathed. Fear keeps us alive. Chapter 14. The Council's Judgment. The Great Hall was a cavern of judgment. 12 council members sat on a raised dais of obsidian. They were ancient wolves, their faces lined with centuries of tradition and cruelty. The air smelled of old parchment and hostility. Ryder stood in the center of the floor. Ayla stood beside him. She felt small, exposed. The silver mark on her wrist pulsed with a nervous rhythm. This is treason, Councilman Vane spat. He was a gray-furred alpha with a scar running down his snout. You bring a rogue into the inner sanctum. You attack a diplomatic envoy to retrieve her. You are unfit to lead. Darius is not a diplomat, Ryder snarled. His voice echoed off the stone walls. He is a kidnapper. He attacked a protected ward of the crown. She is no ward, Vane countered. He stood up, pointing a shaking finger at Ayla. She is an abomination, a dormant omega who steals power. We have sensed the drain, Ryder. Your aura is fluctuating. She is feeding on you like a parasite. The accusation hit Ayla like a physical slap. Murmurs ripple through the gallery. Ryder's control snapped. A growl ripped from his chest. It was not human. His bones cracked audibly. His shoulders expanded, tearing the fabric of his shirt. Fur erupted along his spine. The beast was taking over. The stress of the accusation, combined with the threat to Ayla, shattered his restraint. Ryder! Ayla cried. He fell to one knee. He clawed at the stone floor, gouging deep furrows in the granite. His eyes turned black. He was shifting. Here. Now. If he shifted fully in the council chamber, it would be a declaration of war. It would prove Vane right. Kill the beast. Vane shouted. Guards raised their rifles. Ayla moved on instinct. She didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She threw herself on a Ryder's convulsing back. She slammed her hand, the one with the mark, against the nape of his neck. Calm, she commanded. The silver mark exploded with light. It wasn't a drain. It was a surge. Ayla poured her own dormant energy into him. She fed the beast, not with his power, but with hers. The effect was instantaneous. Ryder gasped. The fur receded. The black drained from his eyes. He slumped forward, catching himself on his hands. The room fell into a stunned silence. The light from Ayla's mark was so bright it cast shadows against the high ceiling. She hadn't weakened him. She had saved him. Ryder looked up. He was human again. He looked at the council. His gaze was steady. Lethal. She is not a parasite, Ryder said, his voice ringing with absolute authority. She is my strength. Vane sat down slowly. He looked pale. He had seen the miracle. But in his eyes, Ayla saw something dangerous. He didn't see a savior. He saw a threat that was too powerful to let live. Chapter 15. The Drums of War. The victory in the Great Hall was short-lived. Ryder swept Ayla out of the chamber before the council could recover their wits. He marched her straight to the war room at the top of the highest tower. He paced the length of the map table. His generals stood at attention, faces grim. They will not accept this, Ryder said. He slammed his fist onto the table. Vane is terrified. He saw what you did. He saw the power transfer. He thinks you can control the Alpha line. He thinks you will usurp the throne. Ayla stood by the balcony doors. The wind howled outside. Maybe I should leave, she said softly. If I go, the threat goes. If you go, I burn the world down to find you, Ryder shot back. He stopped pacing. He walked to her and framed her face in his hands. We are past the point of leaving, Ayla. The bond is awake. If we separate now, the severance will kill us both. Ayla leaned into his touch. She knew he was right. She could feel him in her mind. A constant, warm hum of presence. She was part of him now. So we fight, she said. We fight, Ryder agreed. I will dissolve the council. I will declare martial law. I will make them accept you as queen. It was a beautiful dream, but reality had other plans. A siren began to wail. It was different from the internal alarm. This was the deep, mournful horn of the perimeter watch. It signaled an invasion. Ryder spun toward the balcony. He threw the doors open. Ayla followed him. Far below, at the edge of the valley, the village was burning. Columns of black smoke twisted into the night sky. The orange glow of flames reflected in the river. But it wasn't just fire. Ayla could see the movement of troops. Hundreds of wolves. They carried banners that flapped in the wind. Red Hawks. They're not waiting for the council's vote, Ryder said. His voice was dead calm. The calm of a reaper. Darius has launched a full assault. He turned to Ayla. The look in his eyes broke her heart. It was a goodbye. Stay here, he ordered. Bar the doors. Ryder, no. Ayla grabbed his arm. There are too many of them. It does not matter, he said. He kissed her. It was hard, desperate, a taste of ash and promise. I will not let them touch you, not while I have breath in my lungs. He pulled away. He vaulted over the balcony railing, shifting in midair. A massive black wolf landed on the parapet below and sprinted toward the fire. Ayla watched him go. She watched the man she loved run toward an army of death. And she realized with a sickening jolt that the prophecy was wrong. She wasn't his anchor. She was the reason he was going to die. Chapter 16. The Verdict of Ash. Smoke choked the valley floor. It rose in thick, oily plumes that blotted out the moon. Ryder stood on the battlements. His chest heaved. Blood that was not his own coated his hands. He had driven the first wave of Red Hawks back, but the cost was high. The village was a ruin of charred timber and broken glass. He turned from the carnage. He needed to see Ayla. The bond in his chest was a frantic drumbeat. She was terrified. He could feel her fear vibrating along his nerves like a plucked wire. My king, a voice called out. Ryder spun around. It was Vane. The council head stood with 6 armed enforcers. They blocked the archway leading back to the royal quarters. Their weapons were not pointed at the invaders outside. They were pointed at Ryder. Move, Ryder commanded. His voice was a low rumble of thunder. Vane did not flinch. He held up a scroll sealed with black wax. The council has convened in your absence. We have invoked the purity protocol. The girl is declared a chaotic element. Her existence is illegal under the laws of the first pack. Ryder laughed. It was a cold, jagged sound. I am the law. I am a king. You are a compromised leader, Vane countered. He unrolled the scroll. The Red Hawks have offered truce. They will withdraw their army and spare the rest of the pack. In exchange, we must hand over the anomaly. The Heart Wolf. Ryder stepped forward. The stone beneath his boots cracked. If you touch her, I will tear this fortress down brick by brick. Then you doom us all, Vane said. He signaled the guards. You're under house arrest until the transfer is complete. The girl has already been moved to the tribunal courtyard. Ryder's heart stopped. Moved. They had taken her while he was fighting for their lives. You traitorous snake, Ryder snarled. He moved faster than human sight. He grabbed the nearest guard by the throat and threw him into the stone wall. Bones crunched. Ryder didn't stop. He shifted partially. Claws erupted from his fingertips. He slashed through the blockade, driven by a singular, blinding panic. They had Ayla. He sprinted through the corridors. The fortress felt different. Hostile. The shadows seemed to grab at him. Every servant he passed averted their eyes. They were all in on it. They had all chosen survival over loyalty. Ryder reached the heavy oak doors of the courtyard. They were barred from the outside. He didn't bother with the latch. He slammed his shoulder into the wood. Splinters flew. The door groaned but held. He hit again and again. A scream of pure fury tore from his throat. The wood shattered. Ryder stumbled out into the rain-slicked courtyard. Torches flared in the darkness. A crowd had gathered. In the center, kneeling on the wet stones, was Ayla. Her hands were bound with silver chains. An executioner stood behind her, blade drawn. Ryder froze. Vane stepped out from the shadows, a knife pressed to Ayla's throat. "Take one more step, King Ryder," Vane hissed, "and I open her veins right here." Chapter 17. The Way to the Crown. Ayla knelt on the freezing stone. The cold seeped through her jeans, numbing her legs. But the cold inside her chest was worse. She looked at Ryder. He stood 20 feet away, panting, covered in blood and rain. He looked like a god of war, brought to his knees. Vane's knife dug into the soft skin of her neck. A single drop of warm blood trickled down her collarbone. "Let her go," Ryder said. His voice was wrecked. "Take the crown. Take the kingdom. Just let her leave." "The crown is already mine," Vane sneered. "But the girl is the price of peace. Darius demands her." Ayla looked at the faces in the crowd. She recognized the baker, the blacksmith, the nurse who had treated her wounds. They all looked away. Shame was a heavy blanket over the courtyard, but fear was heavier. They were willing to let her die to save their homes. She understood. In that moment, the fog of terror lifted. Ayla saw the chessboard clearly. Ryder would fight for her. He would kill Vane. He would slaughter the council. And in doing so, he would destroy the pack he was sworn to protect. The prophecy was true. She was the catalyst for his ruin. She could not let that happen. "Ryder," she called out. Her voice was steady. He looked at her. His golden eyes were wide with desperation. He shook his head slightly, begging her to be silent, begging her to wait for him, to save her. "Don't," she said. "Don't destroy everything for me. I am not worth a kingdom." "You are worth everything," Ryder roared. The raw agony in his voice made the crowd flinch. "I choose you. I choose you over the throne. I choose you over the pack." "But I don't choose you," Ayla lied. The words tasted like acid. Ryder flinched as if she had struck him. "What? I never wanted this," Ayla said. She forced her voice to be cold. She forced her face to be a mask of indifference. "I wanted safety. I used you. The bond isn't real, Ryder. It's just a biology trick. I don't love you." Silence descended on the courtyard. It was absolute. The only sound was the crackle of torches and the rain hitting the stones. Ryder stared at her. He was searching for the lie. He was searching for the girl who had held him in the dark. But Ayla locked that girl away in a steel box deep in her heart. She gave him only the traitor. "You are lying," Ryder whispered. "I am not," Ayla said. She looked at Vane. "I surrendered to the Red Hawks. Take me to Darius. Just let the king go." Vane smiled. It was a triumphant, ugly thing. "See, Ryder, even the mongrel knows her place." Ryder's shoulders slumped. The fight drained out of him. He didn't believe her lie, but he saw her sacrifice, and that hurt more than the betrayal. He looked at her with a devastation so profound it cracked the earth between them. "You foolish girl," he rasped. "You think this saves me? This kills me." Chapter 18. The Severing. The gates of the fortress groaned open. The Red Hawk convoy rolled into the courtyard. Darius stepped out of the lead vehicle. He wore a pristine white suit that seemed to repel the mud and grime of the war. He looked at the scene, the kneeling girl, the broken king, the treacherous council, and he laughed. "Beautiful," Darius said. He walked toward Vane. "You kept your word. The pack is safe." He turned to Ryder. Darius's eyes were devoid of soul. "And you, King Ryder, you look pathetic." Ryder did not look at Darius. He looked only at Ayla. The bond between them was screaming. It was a physical agony, a stretching of souls that could not be sustained. "To take her," Darius said, pulling a ceremonial dagger from his belt. "I need the claim broken. She belongs to you, Ryder. The mark protects her from my touch. Reject her." "Never," Ryder spat. "Then she dies now," Darius said. He signaled to the executioner standing behind Ayla. The blade raised. "No." Ayla screamed. "Reject her." Vane shouted. "Do it, or watch her head roll." Time slowed down. Ryder looked at the blade hovering over Ayla's neck. He looked at the archers on the walls. He looked at Darius's smug face. There was no way out. No rescue. No miracle. If she remained his mate, she died. If he rejected her, she became an exile. Vulnerable, but alive. Ryder closed his eyes. A tear, hot and silver, tracked through the blood on his cheek. He took a breath. It sounded like a death rattle. "I, Ryder, Alpha King of the Obsidian Pack," he began. His voice shook the stones. Ayla sobbed. "Ryder, please." He opened his eyes. They were dead. "I reject you, Ayla. I deny the bond. I sever the tie." Thunder cracked overhead. Ayla screamed. It was a sound of pure torture. The silver mark on her wrist turned black. It sizzled, burning in her flesh like a brand. The connection in her mind snapped. The warmth of him vanished, replaced by a hollow, freezing void. She collapsed onto the wet stones. Darius stepped forward. The barrier was gone. He grabbed Ayla by her hair and hauled her up. She was limp, broken. "Thank you for the gift," Darius whispered to Ryder. He dragged Ayla toward the waiting car. She didn't fight. She didn't look back. She was empty. Ryder stood rooted to the spot. He watched the car drive away. He watched the taillights fade into the darkness. The rain washed over him, but he felt nothing. The king was still standing, but the man was dead. Then a sound rose from his chest. It started low and built into a crescendo of madness. Ryder threw his head back and howled. It was a sound of such violent grief that the windows of the fortress shattered. His wolf surfaced, not the noble beast. The monster. The golden eyes turned crimson. He looked at Vane. He looked at the council. "Run," Ryder whispered. And then the slaughter began. Chapter 19. The King of Ash. Silence reigned in the great hall. It was a heavy, suffocating blanket that smelled of copper and death. Ryder sat on the steps of the obsidian dais. His hands dangled between his knees. Blood dripped from his fingertips to the stone floor. Drip, drip. It was the only clock that mattered now. Vane lay 10 feet away. The traitor's eyes stared unseeing at the vaulted ceiling. The rest of the council had fled or met similar fates. Ryder had cleared the room. He had purged the rot from his kingdom. But the victory tasted like ash. He stared at his chest. A hollow ache throbbed where the bond used to be. He had severed it. He had cut the cord to save her life. But the silence in his head was louder than the screaming had been. It was a void, a black hole that swallowed the light. "Sire." Ryder did not look up. It was Silas. The Gamma stood at the edge of the blood-slicked floor. He held a tablet with shaking hands. "The Red Hawks have crossed the river," Silas reported. His voice was tight with fear. "They're taking her to the old quarry. Intel suggests they're setting up a siphon ritual." Ryder let out a breath. It rattled in his chest. A ritual. Darius didn't just want a prisoner. He wanted to drain the heart wolf dry. He wanted to drink her soul to become a god. "Let them," Ryder whispered. Silas stepped closer. "Sire." "I rejected her," Ryder said. He looked at his empty hands. "She is safe. The bond is broken. She is just a normal wolf now. The ritual will fail." "You are wrong." The voice came from the shadows. Elder Thorn shuffled into the light. He leaned heavily on his staff. He did not look at the bodies. He looked straight at Ryder. "The rejection breaks a mate bond," Thorn rasped. "But you cannot break the cordis lupus with words. She is the heart wolf. Her soul is woven into the ley lines of this land. You merely silenced the radio. The signal is still there." Ryder stood up. The movement was stiff. "What are you saying?" "I am saying she is still connected to you," Thorn said. He pointed a gnarled finger at Ryder's chest. "And if they drain her, they drain you. You will not just lose your mate. You will lose your soul. You will become the mindless beast the prophecy foretold." Ryder felt a flicker. It was faint, a tiny spark in the endless dark. It was pain. Her pain. She was terrified. She was calling for him, not with words, but with the raw energy of her spirit. The void in his chest caught fire. She was alive. She was still his. Ryder grabbed the sword from Vane's dead hand. The steel felt cold and righteous. The despair vanished, replaced by a cold, crystalline purpose. "Silas," Ryder commanded. His voice was back. The king had returned. "Sound the war horn. We are not defending the fortress tonight. We are hunting." Chapter 20. The Army of Ghosts. Rain lashed the training grounds. It washed the blood from Ryder's armor, but it could not wash away the fury etched into his face. He stood on the back of a flatbed truck. Below him, 500 wolves looked up. They were not the royal guard. The guard had fled or died. These were the scraps, the kitchen staff, the stable hands, the injured veterans, and mixed among them were the rogues. Mara, the contact from Ayla's phone, stood at the front. She looked wary, but her claws were out. Ryder looked at them. They were a ragged army, an army of ghosts. "The council is dead," Ryder announced. His voice carried over the wind without a microphone. "The old laws are dead. Tonight, we do not fight for a crown. We do not fight for land." He raised the sword. Lightning flashed, illuminating the blade. "We fight for the girl they stole," Ryder roared. "We fight for the innocent." Darius thinks he has won because he holds the high ground. He thinks he has won because I'm a broken king. But he forgot one thing. Ryder's eyes began to glow. The crimson bleed of his wolf merged with the gold of his human soul. He forgot that a wolf with nothing to lose is the most dangerous thing on earth. A howl rose from the crowd. It started with Mara. Then the veterans joined in. Then the stable boys. It grew until the sound shook the rain from the sky. It was a pledge of allegiance written in sound. Ryder jumped down from the truck. He landed in a crouch. His body began to crack and shift. He didn't fight the change this time. He welcomed it. Bones rearranged. Fur exploded from his skin. He grew larger than any natural wolf. He was a beast of shadow and starlight, a monster made to kill gods. He turned toward the forest, toward the old quarry. "Find her," his wolf screamed. The pack surged forward. They were a tide of fur and teeth. They abandoned the vehicles. They abandoned tactics. They ran on instinct. They followed the alpha, who was running straight into hell. Ryder led the charge. The trees blurred into streaks of black and green. The wind tore at his fur. He pushed his muscles past the breaking point. Every step was a prayer. Every breath was her name. "Hold on, Ayla." He sent the thought into the ether. "I am coming." Chapter 21. The Altar of Bone. The old quarry was a scar on the face of the mountain. Jagged cliffs surrounded a deep, stone pit. In the center, the Red Hawks had erected a platform of twisted iron and bone. Torches burned with green witch fire. The scent of sulfur and ozone was thick enough to taste. Ryder crested the ridge. He skidded to a halt, his claws digging furrows into the rock. His pack fanned out behind him, silent and lethal. Below, on the platform, Ayla was strapped to a stone slab. She looked small. Her clothes were torn. Her skin was pale as milk. Darius stood over her. He held a chalice carved from obsidian. He was chanting. The words were ancient and wrong. They made the air vibrate with nausea. Ayla thrashed against the restraints. She screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the chanting. Ryder felt her terror hit him like a physical blow. It nearly brought him to his knees. The bond was damaged, yes, but the pain conducted perfectly. He felt the knife Darius held, as if it were pressed against his own throat. "Attack!" Ryder commanded through the mind link. The command was simple. The execution was chaos. 500 wolves poured over the lip of the quarry. They fell upon the Red Hawk guards like a landslide. The sound of battle erupted instantly. Screams, snarls, the wet tear of flesh. Ryder ignored the soldiers. He ignored the arrows whistling past his ears. He had only one target. He launched himself off the cliff. It was a 50-foot drop. He landed on the roof of a supply shed, crushing it, and sprang toward the ritual platform. Darius looked up. He saw the massive black wolf flying toward him. He didn't look afraid. He looked delighted. "Right on time," Darius shouted. He plunged the knife down toward Ayla's chest. Ryder roared. He pushed off the ground with enough force to crack the bedrock. He was a missile of rage, but he was too far away. The knife was inches from her heart. Ayla's eyes met his. In that split second, time stopped. She didn't look at the knife. She looked at him. She didn't look angry about the rejection. She looked relieved that he was there. "Live," she mouthed. Then the air exploded. Ayla didn't just lie there. As the knife touched her skin, she screamed. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a scream of power. The dormant energy in her blood The heart wolf power that Darius wanted to steal reacted to the threat. A shockwave of silver light erupted from her body. It blasted Darius backward. He flew off the platform and smashed into the stone wall. The knife clattered away. Ryder landed on the platform. He slid to a halt over Ayla's body, snarling at the shadows, daring anyone to come closer. She was alive, but the silver light wasn't fading. It was intensifying. Ayla was glowing like a dying star. The ritual had started a reaction that couldn't be stopped. She was overloading. Ryder shifted back to human form. He ignored his nakedness. He ignored the war raging around them. He grabbed her face. Her skin was burning hot. "Ayla," he shouted over the roar of the magic. "Look at me. I can't stop it," she cried. Tears evaporated on her cheeks. "I'm going to explode, Ryder." "Run." "Never," he said. He laid his body over hers. He pressed his chest against the burning supernova of her heart. If she was going to burn, he would burn with her. Chapter 22. The Heart of the Storm. The world dissolved into white fire. Ayla screamed as the energy tore through her veins. It felt like her blood was boiling. She was a vessel too small for the ocean trying to fill it. She waited for the explosion. She waited for death. But death did not come. Instead, a weight pressed against her. Ryder. He was heavy and solid and real. He didn't pull away from the burning light. He pushed into it. "Give it to me," Ryder roared. His voice vibrated against her chest. "Do not hold it. Let it flow." Ayla stopped fighting. She opened the floodgates of her soul. The silver torrent rushed out of her, but it didn't dissipate into the air. It poured into him. Ryder gasped. His back arched. The black fur on his arms stood up, crackling with static. He became the lightning rod for her storm. The agony vanished. It was replaced by a sensation of absolute completeness. The black, charred mark of the rejection on her wrist shattered like glass. Underneath, the skin knit together in a flash of gold. The bond snapped back into place. It wasn't a thread anymore. It was a steel cable. "No!" a voice shrieked. Darius scrambled up from the rubble. His white suit was scorched. His face was a mask of madness. He saw the golden light connecting them. He saw the power he had tried to steal being weaponized by love. "It is mine," Darius screamed. He grabbed the obsidian knife from the ground. He lunged. Ryder spun around. He didn't shift. He didn't need to. He was glowing with the power of the heart wolf. He caught Darius's wrist in midair. The sound of bones snapping was loud and crisp. Darius howled. He dropped the knife. "You wanted her power," Ryder said. His eyes were two suns. "Here, take it." Ryder placed his hand on Darius's chest. Ayla felt the intent through the bond. She pushed. She lent him everything she had. A pulse of concentrated moon energy fired from Ryder's palm. It hit Darius like a cannonball. The Red Hawk leader flew backward. He hit the stone pillar of the quarry wall. The impact brought the rocks down. Tons of granite crashed onto the platform, burying the man who tried to steal the stars. Silence fell over the quarry. The dust settled. Ryder turned back to Ayla. The glow faded from his skin, leaving him human again. He looked exhausted. He looked battered. But he looked whole. He reached out and touched her cheek. His thumb traced the line of her jaw. "I thought I lost you." Ayla covered his hand with hers. The gold mark on her wrist hummed a steady, warm rhythm. "You can't lose something that is part of your soul, Ryder. The elder was right. You couldn't break it." Ryder pulled her up. He held her tightly, burying his face in her neck. "I will never try again." Chapter 23. The Knee That Bends. The sun began to crest over the quarry rim. It illuminated a battlefield that had gone still. The Red Hawk's soldiers stood frozen. They looked at the pile of rocks that had become Darius's tomb. They looked at their weapons, then at the couple standing on the platform. Ryder stepped forward. He still held Ayla's hand. He refused to let go. "Darius is dead," Ryder announced. His voice was hoarse, but it carried to every corner of the pit. "The council is dead. The old ways are ash." He looked down at the enemy army. He didn't look like a tyrant. He looked like a survivor. "You can die for a corpse," Ryder said, gesturing to the rubble. where you can live for a future. Drop your weapons and go home. A single Red Hawk lieutenant stepped forward. He looked at Ryder. Then he looked at Ayla. He saw the way the light still clung to her skin. He saw the golden mark of the Alpha Prime on her wrist. The lieutenant dropped his rifle. It clattered on the stones. He fell to one knee. He bowed his head. "My queen." It started a ripple. One by one, the Red Hawks dropped their weapons. One by one, the army of ghosts, the cooks, the stable hands, the rogues, lowered their makeshift spears. They didn't bow to Ryder alone. They bowed to the pair. They bowed to the balance. Ryder looked at Ayla. There was awe in his expression. "They're kneeling for you." Ayla looked at the sea of bowed heads. She didn't feel like the invisible shop girl anymore. She didn't feel like the unwanted runt. She felt the earth beneath her feet. She felt the pack around her. "No," Ayla said softly. "They're kneeling for us." She squeezed his hand. The healing energy flowed from her, knitting the cuts on his chest, soothing the bruises on his arms. It was effortless. It was breathing. Ryder turned to his patchwork army. "Let us go home." They walked out of the quarry together. They walked past the surrendering soldiers. They walked past the wreckage of the war. The sun hit the gold mark on Ayla's wrist, and it flashed like a beacon. The Heart Wolf had been found, and she had chosen her mate. Chapter 24. The Crown of Scars. 3 weeks later, the Fortress of Wolves looked different. The heavy velvet drapes were gone. Sunlight flooded the hallways. The smell of fear was replaced by the scent of fresh pine and sawdust as repairs began. Ayla stood on the main balcony. She wore a dress of deep midnight blue. It was sleeveless, leaving the golden mark on her wrist visible to the world. It was no longer a secret shame. It was the symbol of the new era. She held her phone in her hand. She looked at the cracked screen. Ping. A message appeared. "Are you going to hide out there all day? The ceremony starts in 5 minutes." Ayla smiled. She typed a reply. "I'm just enjoying the view and contemplating a new tax reform for herbal imports." She hit send. Ryder stepped onto the balcony. He wore the ceremonial black armor of the Alpha King, but he wore it lightly now. The tension that used to define his frame was gone. The quiet he had craved was finally his. He checked his phone and chuckled. "Approved. Consider it your first decree." He walked over to her. He wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. He inhaled her scent, lavender and rain. "Are you ready?" Ryder asked. Ayla looked down at the courtyard. It was packed with wolves from every clan. The Red Hawks, the Obsidian Pack, the Rogues. They were mingling. They were talking. It wasn't a perfect peace, but it was a start. "I was invisible for 22 years, Ayla said. "I thought I wanted to stay that way. I thought safety meant hiding." Ryder kissed the sensitive spot behind her ear. "And now I know that safety is not hiding," she said, turning in his arms to face him. "Safety is being known, being seen." She placed her hand on his chest. She felt his heart beating in time with hers. The bond was a warm, golden river connecting them. "I love you, Ryder," she said. Ryder stopped breathing for a second. It was the first time she had said it without fear, without the shadow of death hanging over them. "I love you," he replied. "My anchor, my queen." The war horns sounded below. A cheer went up from the crowd. They were calling for them. Ayla took his hand. She didn't hesitate. She didn't stumble. She walked with her mate back into the fortress, not as a prisoner, but as the ruler of her own fate. The invisible girl was gone. Long live the queen.